Welcome to It's a Matter of Music, a show that takes you down the roads traveled by creators and artists, searching for the doors in and out of the music business. Hosted by songwriter, poet, and storyteller John Gray, and brought to you by It's a Matter of Music Publishing Company, where melodies are wrapped around life. Now, here's John.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of Melodies Wrapped Around Life, and I love doing this show. It's always so much fun to have some of my creative friends stop by and visit, but today is a very important one of those days, and it's because I have the lovely Miss Andy Landis with me, and we've been trying to make this happen for over a year to get her into the studio, and I'm so proud to have her with me today. And Andy, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me, John.
Well,
Appreciate it.
You're just so welcome. And Andy lives over in Bedford County,
Yep.
and one of the places she travels around. And it's hard to keep up with, and she's a creative on many levels and many forms. I first knew about Andy as a songwriter. And didn't know that prior to that she was involved in stage performance.
Right.
And you've written books.
Yes, sir. I sure have.
and all of a sudden decided that you wanted to go back to school and really get into stage performance.
Correct. That's right. I went to Lesley University. I just graduated in 2015, May of 2015. With a master's degree in writing for stage and screen. And I absolutely love it. It's kind of full circle because honestly, in my early days, my parents were both very musical, and we were lower middle class. My dad was, worked maintenance and 2-3 jobs. My mom delivered coffee makers and telephone books and that kind of thing. She has a farming background from Pennsylvania, and I grew up in the very southern part of New Jersey. But my parents, there was always music in the house, and they loved musicals. I mean, my dad knew every word from the songs from Music Man and things like that.
Isn't that great?
Yes. And so I started taking dancing lessons when I was 8. And my dad had some illnesses from the war, from World War II. And at some point, my parents moved us all to California, where the climate was dry. So by the time I was, in high school, I was performing in those plays and doing musicals there, and Bye Bye Birdie and Oklahoma, all those kinds of things. And I started singing professionally. Believe it or not, we lived right up the road from where Lawrence Welk had his hotel. Yeah, he had a hotel, a country club there. And I decided I was going to try to work there to see if I could meet him. This is when obviously he was still living. And so I started working as a maid in high school. That's the first time I ever saw anything that was fancy, like fur coats and
That's one way of going and getting it.
And so I started working as a maid there, and one of the older maids said to me, "Honey, do you sing?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." And she said, "Oh, now you listen to me. If Lawrence Welk ever comes in and he says, 'Do you sing?' you say yes, and then you sing something for him. You be ready," she said. So I went home, told my mom. I was, 15, 16 years old. And sure enough, one day we were cleaning his office, and in walks Lawrence Welk. And I remember being so nervous. And the the other maid that was standing next to me, her name was Grace. And she was standing next to me, and he said, "Young lady, do you sing?" And Grace is poking me in the back. And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And he said, "Sing something for me." So I sang Snowbird by Anne Murray. And then I sang "There's No Business Like Show Business." Oh my gosh! And then he hired me to start singing in the restaurant. So then I was serving food, and then I'd go out and be time to sing, and I'd go out and sing. And I had a three girl group at the time, and we did kind of Andrews Sisters 3 harmony things.
Oh my!
Yeah. So we started singing in the club. Anyway, I used to do local shows with him back in the day when he was up there, and I was young.
Oh, he's still up there. No. Ask my mother-in-law. She watches him every weekend. Lawrence Welk.
No, I thought you meant up there, like he's up there.
No,
he's gone.
He's up there too, but he still has an audience right now.
Yeah, he does. And there's more to that story eventually, but that's how I kind of got my professional start. And I was singing in clubs and took a lot of what I learned from working at his hotel. And from there I moved to Los Angeles, because now we're living in Southern California. Moved to LA, and I remember I'd meet some producers and go on interviews, and they'd say, you know, who do you admire? And I'd say Ginger Rogers, name all these old people, and they would look at me like, where have you been living under a rock? I mean, you're supposed to like, you know, Fleetwood Mac, people, you know. So anyway, from there, I was on the stage, and I was doing a small part in a show called Mr. Roberts. And I had really good reviews, and then I did a show. I was Joan of Arc in some show, and a man named David Marish from the Marish family, who did a lot of films, came up to me and said, you need to try out for the Los Angeles Ram cheerleaders. We're having our very first cheerleading squad for Los Angeles Rams, which was like, Cowboys were the only ones at the time who had that. And I said to him, I remember, like, I am a serious actor. I'm a serious actress. It was actress at the time.
Right.
I said, I'm a serious actress and I don't want to be a cheerleader. Although I was a cheerleader in high school, it wasn't quite the same. And he said, no, you will meet more people and get more opportunities if you do this. I was already taking acting classes in LA. I was already singing. I was already performing. But I had an instinct that he was right, because I was nobody. I was one of hundreds of thousands of young women across the country who were across the world, coming to Hollywood, you know? Right. And I tried out. There was almost 1,000 women who tried out, and they picked 27, and I was one of them.
My goodness.
And from that, I got modeling jobs. I got so many opportunities to do commercials. I did Kentucky Fried Chicken, where I was singing and dancing. The Colonel was still alive. And why do I work with all these old people? I don't know. But anyway, I was singing and dancing. I ended up sitting on the Colonel's lap in this commercial, and I did.
I bet he was happy.
I don't know. There were so many. I don't think he remembered at the time. I think he was just sort of. And,
I know one thing. He liked Jack Daniels.
Did he?
Oh Lord, yeah.
And I did Ford Motor Parts, and I did Milk Advisory Board, and it gave me a leg up, but it's not really what I was a professional dancer, so I did get to do a lot of dancing. I danced with on the O.J. Simpson NFL special and Bob Hope, and I got to meet Bob Hope and all of these incredible people doing that.
How wonderful is that?
I was so blessed. And then I was starting to do modeling. And then I started my own modeling business. And all those modeling jobs that I had in the fashion industry is what I was able to raise the money for myself to then start cutting demos of the songs that I was writing.
Right.
Yeah. So in the middle of the 80s or so, I had a record deal. And I was my name is Cynthia, and so I was going by Cindy Landis. I was Andy Landis as a kid, and then I decided that was a boy's name, and I wanted to have, you know, Cindy Landis. And just as my record was coming out, Cyndi Lauper came out. And I remember one time being on the interstate, on 405 interstate, which is, any of you who've ever been there, it's very crowded. And I remember hearing the DJ say, and now we have a new artist. Her name is Cyndi Lauper. And my record was out at the same time.
You're going, that's supposed to be me.
That's exactly what I thought. And so the manager came to me and said, you have to change your name. And she said, I have a good name for you, Velvet. Velvet Landis? That doesn't make any sense. And so I said, well, I have this nickname, and it's Andy, because when I was a kid, I put the C and the I so close together, it looked like an A-N-D-Y. And so I said, that's my nickname. Everybody called me that. And she said, oh, I like that. So anyway, went back to my nickname and had my first record deal. That record company, after a couple singles, went out, and somebody said, you need to go to Nashville. And I remember praying. I was so scared to come to Nashville on my own. And then I had this, I swear it was like an encounter with an angel practically, and this person was walking past me when I was on my bicycle, riding my bike in LA. Nobody does that now because it's way too crowded. But she stuck this little book in my hand, a little tiny book, and it said, be not afraid. And I took that like God had just like put this angel, walked in front of me, put this book in my hand. I looked over and she was gone, just like that. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Nashville. And I started coming to Nashville, I think 86 was my first time. And I went straight to BMI, and they were helpful, and I started walking up and down Music Row when you could do that.
Right.
I had a paper bag of cassettes of songs that I'd been writing since I was a kid. And I went to all of the different record companies and publishing companies, and eventually Tim Whipperman at Warner Chappell liked what he heard and talked to me and introduced me, because I was still living in LA at the time. And he
And how old were you at that point?
At late 20s, my 20s,
young 20s, middle 20s?
Yeah,
okay.
I don't remember exactly. But so 20s, and so he said, you need to meet Les Biter. And I went to the Los Angeles office, and they gave the okay for Tim Whipperman to sign me. And that's how I got started. I got signed in 1988 as a songwriter with Warner Chappell out of Nashville, and it changed my life. And music changed my life. Music took me everywhere. That's everything I've gotten to do that's been grander than me is music, and I feel very, very, very blessed. And then, so I had a record deal here with Star Song Records and toured. I toured Europe and did all that kind of stuff, and I got to meet Janie Fricke and Dolly Parton. I've worked with Dolly Parton. I've just had this incredible time, and I've been trying to I'm a writer.
Right.
I started out as a writer, and I just love to sing and love to perform, but my heart is really writing. And so I met Maggie Vaughn, and a lot of people in this community know and love her as the Poet Laureate of Tennessee.
We know Maggie. Love Maggie.
I love Maggie. And one day she said to me, honey, I can do her voice really good. Honey, Lord, honey, I'm going to write me a play about Minnie Pearl. I want you to write it with me, honey. You're the one. You're the one I've been waiting for. And I said, okay, And so we started to write this musical about Minnie Pearl because she was friends with her.
Right.
And Minnie had said, if you ever write a play about me, Maggie, wait till I'm dead. So Maggie waited till she had passed away, and then she and I wrote this musical. And then I was married at the time to Steve Buckingham, and Steve Buckingham was at that time working with Dolly, and he gave her this play, and Dolly loved it. Big producers came down and met with us, and it was just an amazing thing, but it kind of it just fell through, and we still hope that someday that play works out. But it's an amazing musical, and I wrote songs with Maggie, and we wrote the whole thing. It's an amazing story. And then she and I wrote a script for a film. I don't know. I think I'm talking too much.
No, that's what this show's all about.
Talking and talking.
It's about talking.
That's about talking.
About talking and it's about creating.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard or seen. Yeah. In our time today, so far, we've spent some time together prior to this, about any painting or drawing or art.
I am
artists, like pencil, pen, brush artists.
Yeah. Terrible. I cannot draw a stick figure.
But
I am a bad drawer.
But other than that,
I could probably, if I pretended it was really good, I might become famous for being a really bad.
There you go. But other
artist.
than that, this lady right here can do just about anything that needs to be done with words. And the musical side of your music, or the melody side.
I write melody too. Yeah.
You did most of that yourself as well.
Yeah, not always.
And how were you trained in that? In music? I really am not trained. I was trained as a singer, dancer, actor. Right. But I really wasn't trained, so I know about 4. I probably know 6 chords, honestly. And what instrument do you use?
Guitar.
Guitar. Okay.
And I used to play very poorly piano, but just enough to hear something that was on the piano just for myself. And when I came to Nashville, I was still playing guitar and singing myself. But when I got here, there were so many amazing guitar players that I just put my guitar down because my songs were so
Come
much
here.
better when somebody else was
Oh yeah,
playing them.
oh yeah.
And so I've sort of lost the little skill I had. Now I just play to write. I don't really perform and play because other people are so much better at that.
Well, and what that does, I know I'm sort of the same way. I have 3.5 to 4 chords.
Yeah.
And it takes away from my ability to deliver something because you're worried about whether you're getting the chords right, and you're not doing as good a job at presenting the vocal version.
That's true.
And
I'm very, as you can tell,
no.
my hands are going over. So for me, it did kind of, in some ways it kept me feeling safe to be behind an instrument, but then at some point I realized that I like to perform.
Right.
And not just sing a song,
Right.
but actually to perform it a little bit. I probably that's from my acting background, but I really enjoy having other people play because I just think it sounds so much better when they play it. Even if I've written it, I like how other people play it better. I worked with some really amazing, truly amazing musicians. I've been humbled, by the opportunity to work with amazing musicians. Jerry Douglas and Pat McGrath and...
No, they're no good.
They're no good. Ricky Skaggs, and just people, it's all luck. It's all luck and gratitude. I'm very, very grateful.
Well, and what we understand, what I understand, and I'm sure you do as well, more so than me, is our 2 or 3 chords or whatever it is we're doing, for me, is just rudimentary enough to go to somebody who really knows how to play.
Right.
And can say, okay, now I know what the basic melody is.
Right.
Now here's what we're going to do to it.
Yeah.
And something else that they do that's very important is most of them understand white space.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people try to put too much into a song and there's not any time to digest what you're serving because there's the next lead run is there, which sometimes doesn't need to be there.
Right.
It needs to be kind of quiet for a minute. Yeah. And these guys that do that and do it well are experts at it.
Yeah. That's right.
And it's fun when you get to go in the room with one of them.
Oh man. And when you're in a room with a bunch of them, go into the recording studio filled with people that I'd heard about, and Mark O'Connor's playing a fiddle part on a song that I wrote, and it's such a moment. How you were talking earlier, we were talking earlier about the journey, that it's really not, I don't want to get emotional about it, but it's really not the end. The end is the climax. It really is the whole thing. Getting here. How did I get here? I don't even know.
Hard work.
Hard work.
Determination. A higher power.
Absolutely.
Higher power saying, "Oh yeah, this is what I'm gonna do with you."
That poor thing. She needs a little something. Give her some. Give her a bone or two.
Give that girl a bone. Give her some gravy to go with that biscuit.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Look at her. She just cries at the drop of a hat. Yeah, give it to her. Life is a very dear and tenuous operation. Yeah. And it's not always fun, and it's not always easy, and it depends upon what you want to take out of it. Yeah, and
because it's all given. It's whether you want to take it or not, and sometimes that's a very difficult choice and a very long journey and hard journey to make.
There were times in Los Angeles where I had to really make choices about compromising. And I don't mean compromising my art, I mean compromising my person, myself. This is before sexual harassment laws. This is before, people would it was called casting couch, and that was a part of Hollywood that was just accepted. And I have so many stories. That's for a whole nother show. But when I got to Nashville, that really wasn't here. And it was so refreshing to be in the South where people were I never ever was asked to compromise in that way, and I flourished, and I felt joy being here, and I loved the songs and the story and the values that Nashville had in comparison to what I'd experienced in Los Angeles.
Well, and I think I'm sure you paid attention to Ken Burns'
Yes, I did.
Thing about
country music
in Nashville, and I think at the time when all of this was founded, females were the foundation. Mama Maybelle Carter and the mothers in the household who took those songs that were brought over from Europe and sang those songs to their children and saved that history by storytelling through music. And most of that was women that did that. And so when country music first started out, it was founded on female power.
That's true.
And female respect. You think somebody would disrespect Maybelle Carter? No.
No, I don't think so.
No. And I think there was a huge difference between California and Nashville in those regards.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that woman's the one that was sitting on the porch singing that song.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a really good place for me, and I love Nashville. I miss the old Music Row. When I got signed to Warner Chappell, it was a little yellow building, and then they tore it down and they put that big tall building, which was one of the first, and we used to call it Reba World because Reba McEntire. Sorry, Reba, if you're watching, which you probably aren't, but if you are, I don't mean any disrespect.
We love you, Reba.
We love you, Reba. But the building went up, and they took down the old Warner Chappell building.
Yeah.
And I remember driving past it and just feeling as though something in me had been torn out, and I was there in a short time compared to so many others, but there was so much history, and people would walk in and out and up and down Music Row, and we knew each other. And even though I was relatively new, having come in the 80s,
right,
there are people up and down that Music Row from the 70s. I stayed right there. What was the name of that place? There was that building that had the pool with the shape of a guitar in the back. Remember that?
Yes, but I can't remember.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, I can't
that was
remember.
a place. It was right over by the interstate too, and that's where there was a lot of lounge singing done there as far as country people were
and
there.
It had the guitar-shaped pool.
It had the guitar-shaped pool out there.
Stayed
and
there
it was
a couple
something
times.
Lodge.
Yeah, something lodge.
Travel Lodge, was it? Not one of the Travel Lodge, but it was something else.
Yeah.
We'll figure
You'll
that
figure it
out.
But I stayed at the Shoney's. There was a Shoney's, and then there was a kind of an old hotel that was right there, and I would just stay right there, right on the outside the Music Row, right, it was on Music Row, and BMI building was really tiny, and people were kind and welcoming, and I wrote with so many amazing people that I would never have even dreamed about, like Alan Shamblin, who wrote "I Can't Make You Love Me," that song that Bonnie Raitt sang, and I worked with.
And you wrote with Alan.
I wrote with him, yeah. And I wrote with who's the one that you got to know when to hold him. Schlitz, Don Schlitz. Yes, worked with. I was friends with Naomi Judd. I had cancer in 1990, and Naomi Judd gave me a book, and I still have it. How she wrote this message to me about how to be strong and brave, and she was just sort of overcoming her illness at the time, and I've just had opportunity that for a small town girl born in Camden, New Jersey, and living in a little town in South Jersey with I always say my relatives, like all my relatives are truckers, all the guys were truckers and everything, and I would say everybody in my family is necks stained permanently blue, blue collar, and so here I am now on this journey with, I now have a master's degree, and I've been in the music business, and now I'm writing plays, and I've written a couple books, and how did this?
It's a wonderful life.
It is a wonderful life. It's an amazing life, but it has not been easy. It's not been easy.
No, it's never. It's not supposed to be.
No, No, it's not supposed to be.
Not the real stuff, not the
the
good
real
stuff.
Nah.
The good stuff's never
That's
easy.
because you're right about the hard stuff, and then then it becomes the good stuff.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so for example, I had cancer, malignant melanoma, in 1990. So I'd only been in Nashville a little bit, few years. And there I was at Vanderbilt having cancer surgery. And years later, I wrote a song called Sea of Pink for a friend of mine because I had had cancer. She said, would you write a song for women with breast cancer? And I was like, I don't know, it's different kind of cancer, maybe not. And she said, oh, Andy, if you stand on the stage and you just look out at all those women wearing pink, it just looks like a sea of pink. And I went, yes, I will write that song and I'm going to call it Sea of Pink, and I did. And then Susan G. Komen used it in their some promotional videos, and I got to sing it several times at the Race for the Cure in Nashville. And these are the kinds of things that I couldn't have imagined. I imagined my life being different, but in fact it has been amazing.
Yeah.
Just the way it is, just the way it is.
And as I've said before, my dear wife Fran gave me a button that says that almost famous on it, and which I wear very proudly.
I need a button like that. I need
because and then you've got, what is that, 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon.
Yes.
And so the thing about it is you're a separation closer to all of that than I've been. Although I've been close on some things, but it's the fact that we've been on a road together. Mm-hmm. It makes no difference how far we both go down that road. It's the fact that we've met on that road, and we're on the road together right now. And it's the time that we get to spend together and the stories that we share with one another, not where it ends.
Well,
it's the beautiful things that are happening right now that's what's so important. And most people don't realize that. Everybody's looking for the destination, and they're not paying attention to the journey.
Yeah.
And the beauty's in the journey.
Yeah, for me, my dad was, he was a prisoner of war in World War II and had amazing stories. And he had this wanderlust. And I think I got a lot of the idea of journeying from him. And here's what I mean. By the time I was 13 years old, I'd seen 48 of the I've seen the whole continental United States by the time I was 13, because my dad would pack us up in that little station wagon. We didn't even have most of the time we didn't even have a tent. We literally slept in the back of the car, and my parents would sleep on the ground, and we'd go from one state to another. And I mean, I have such an amazing memory, and my father and mother would work so hard all year long to save for those. Sometimes it was a week, sometimes it was 2 weeks, and they'd throw us in the back and we'd wake up in somewhere else. And I remember one vacation in particular, they must have been real low on money and we just didn't know it, so they would play these games with us and have a contest who could eat the most on the least amount of money. So that's how they taught us math. And then, you'd eat
and frugality.
Frugality. But we didn't realize they were thinking, how do we not tell the kids to not eat like a hamburger? They got to get mac and cheese or whatever. So who could ever get the most food for the least amount was the winner. And how they made, my dad would walk us up the side of a mountain in Glacier, for example, and we'd get to the top and he'd see a cigarette butt. And he would pick it up and he'd say, see kids, don't ever leave your litter behind. And he would tuck that in his pocket. And he just taught us to love this country. And he taught us to love music. And he taught us to love adventure. And I think partially my dad is why. My mom was always adventuresome and ready to have fun. But my dad loved the journey. So we would go somewhere and he'd say, I wonder where this road goes. And we would just turn on a road and drive till we ended up in some little town or somebody's farm and, you know, some little field with horses, and we'd get out of the car and Dad would say, isn't this amazing? We just found this place that nobody else has found, he would say.
Or the world's biggest ball of string.
That's right, exactly. Or Cadillac, say, you know, upside down in the field. And I think because of that, I learned, I think, from him to just enjoy just getting in a car and going. And I feel like my life is like that. I started out with the dream that I was going to be a writer when I was in 4th grade. And then I loved music and I loved this, and I thought I was going to be the next Ginger Rogers. I loved Olivia Newton-John. Do you know that I actually ended up working with Olivia Newton-John?
Really?
Yes. She had her own clothing company called Koala Blue. And during my time as a model, I was exactly the right size for her clothing. So there was this woman whom I'd so admired that there I was. And she's like, hey, Andy, how are you today? And I'd say, oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm fine. Well, do you like those clothes? You know, and she's talking to me like that, and like with her little, I was thinking, I have your records, and here I am, like talking to you.
Sure.
You know, and it was just going from that to commercials to music to theater to I wrote the music for, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. Believe me, this is just dumb luck most of the time. But I wrote the music for and was music supervisor on a film with Peter Fonda and Chris Christopherson and I can't remember the other person, but it was called Woolly Boys. And I was the music supervisor for that, and I, you know, got to do the music for that and wrote some songs in there. And then years later, this past summer, we went to Medora. My husband Lars and I and some friends went to Medora, which is in South Dakota, and it's a theater place. And they actually had, North Dakota rather, and it actually has a hotel with rooms named after the Woolly Boys. And I told the people at the front desk, I was a music supervisor on this film, and then I ended up getting to like stay in the rooms where the movie was like on the walls, where I'd written the music for the movie. It was like, you know, 15 years later, and I was thinking nobody even remembers that movie, but here I am in the room. It's just, I just feel like
supposed to be.
God. And see, I think that's a lot of it, is I just keep trusting God, and I don't try to force things. I just sometimes just go with the flow. And sometimes that takes you to a dead end, but if I've learned something taking that little dead end road, then I'm a better person. For me, the journey is not the destination, it's who I'm becoming. Who I am, and not what I do. And for me, that's the journey of this artistic life, is makes me a person that I want to become.
And a lot of times, and after reading some of your stuff and reading some other things that journalists and interviewers have written about you, you don't always tackle the easy stuff or the stuff that might be demanded most. You look at the hard side of things and the issues that are taking place in life with people who maybe you're getting a raw deal. Maybe they have problems, health problems, mental problems. You know, life is not always fun for everybody, and a lot of times that stuff gets skimmed over because it's uncomfortable. For people to throw it out on the table. But you're one of those people that put it on the plate and even have salt and pepper and maybe a little cinnamon to go with it, you know?
Yeah, well, how can we garnish this so it tastes real good when it's going down?
But you at least understand that you need to digest it.
Yes, yeah.
And that's a tough thing to do, and you're very good at doing that in a palatable way.
I try to be. I want to be. I actually really believe that if our lives are too easy, that we become soft. And I don't mean soft-hearted. I mean lazy and ungrateful, and then we feel entitled. And I think for me, there's so many people that I've met that need to be heard, and I want to tell their stories. And for example, when my dad was dying, he was in Prescott, Arizona at the VA. And while he was there was a man sitting in the hallway in a wheelchair. And while I was talking to him, I found myself talking about my dad. And this gentleman was a veteran, not as old as my dad, but he was a veteran. And I started telling him about my dad, and he would just go, and he would just listen to me and earnestly listen to me. And it was in the middle of the night, and he was up and sitting in the wheelchair, and I thanked him, went back to my dad. The next day, I saw him in the hallway again and started talking to him and realized that he had ALS. His name was Frank Harmon. And he had lost his voice in 1988, and this was in 1998. And at that time, I decided that I wanted to be a voice for him. So he could not speak, but he could type, and he had one finger, and it was the middle one. And he used that to talk to many, many people in different ways. He could point, or he could tell you what he thought with that one little finger, but he could type out poems and stories. And I used to think he would write me letters, and I would realize that it must have taken him an hour to write just a few lines. And I decided that I wanted to write something about him. And then over some time, I thought I wanted to write it with him. So we wrote a play, a very short play, called 8888. That was the day he was diagnosed with ALS. And we wrote the short play, and it was in the VA Association Creative Arts Contest. And we performed it live, and we won first place.
Hobbies, yeah.
And then I was able to take that play and submit it to a film company here in Nashville, and we made it into a short film, and that short film was accepted in the New York Film Festival, and we were one of the chosen ones. We didn't win the whole thing, but we were in the New York Film Festival with this movie that we did about the play. And it ended up that I ended up getting an award for a fight for freedom to give voice to people, and was awarded this Medal of Honor, kind of, not an official Medal of Honor, but an honorary medal from Ross Perot. Like, put this medal around my neck for the voice that I had given to people with ALS. And it was like, there was nothing monetary about that. There was nothing anybody ever saw except for the people in the VA and the people with ALS, which is a very small group of people. And it was so rewarding that it changed my life. And I believed from that time that I could write theater. And then I went back to school to get my master's degree in writing for stage and screen. And so it was just taking that side journey, because this gentleman was so kind. And he was so funny. I mean, actually, when I found out he couldn't talk, I said, "Oh my gosh, I just thought you were a good listener and you couldn't even talk." And he was laughing. He laughed. You know, and his little legs would go up like this. And I said, "I thought you were just sitting there listening to me the whole time. You couldn't even talk back." And so it's just been an amazing, taking side trips that have changed my life.
Now here's a book right here that I've got that was on the table, and I just want to show it to you. Here's another part of your life.
Yeah.
You wrote with and for
Betty Shelton.
Betty Shelton, and that is Ricky Van Shelton's wife.
Right.
And Ricky Van Shelton, Andy and I were talking about that. Now, that's an Andy Landis book you can find right there. But we were talking about that earlier. Ricky Van Shelton, to me, was one of the greatest singers that ever came out of Nashville.
Absolutely.
Who all of a sudden just disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
Just, boop,
yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah. He was done.
And you were involved, not necessarily in his poofing away, but you were involved with them,
their lives,
their life. And Ricky Van, you wrote some stuff for him,
right.
with him, and then you wrote this book with his wife.
Yes.
And I mean,
Well,
that's being ingrained in the path.
Yeah.
You're not just walking the path, honey. You're bulldozing the path.
Well, I don't know, not anymore. But what happened with that is, my ex-husband Steve Buckingham was producing, or, you know, he was just working with Ricky Van at the time, and we went to his wife's birthday party. And Steve and I were still engaged. We were not married then. And we went to the wife's, and I remember seeing her, and I remember she would laugh, and then her face would fall real quick after, and she looked like she was thinking about something else. And I just had this feeling in the next few days, I kept thinking, something's wrong with Betty. Something's wrong with Betty. I have to do something. And as I called her, I picked up the phone to call her, and I was like, oh, please, God, help me say the right thing. And as I called her, she, unbeknownst to me, she's on the other end, and she never answers her phone. They didn't answer their phones. But for some reason, she was right by the phone. And just as I called her, she just, without even thinking, picked it up. And I said, hi, Betty, do you remember me? This is Andy. And she said, yeah. And I said, Betty, are you okay? And she said, no. And I said, I just have a feeling you might need somebody to talk to. I invited myself to their home, which I never do. And she hung up the phone and later told me, I don't know what I was thinking inviting you out to my house, but I went to her house and spent the night and talked to her and found out that Ricky and she were on the verge of divorce. And that's the story about how God used me, I think. I mean, I don't think, I know.
You know.
God used me to help save their marriage. So when he was done with their done with music, and felt like he had reached the pinnacle of whatever he would need to reach as an artist, he moved back to Grit, Virginia. He moved back home, and he's working on cars and writing music and just having fun. And he and Betty are happy, and they're still together. And it's an amazing story. And I got to be a part of that. I got to humbly walk with somebody through a very, very hard time for a year.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was really an honor. Well, what happened is then I do my record, and I write a song called "She Stays." Right. And so an interviewer was asking me. It was like a national magazine, and the interviewer said, "What's that song about?" And I said, "Well," and I tell the story, but I don't say who it is because it was private at the time. And I said, "It's this person," and and I tell them the story how this woman stayed because of a friendship. The friendship was me. I got to be with her through the beginning of the story to the amazing finish of the story. And he said, "That's a book." And I went like that. I said, "Yeah, sure, right, that's good. Yeah.
That's a book.
And he said, "No, that's a book." And I called Betty and said, "This is so weird, but somebody told me that we should write a book." And she said, "Well, maybe we should." And so we started writing it, and then we talked to a publisher, and the publisher said, "Oh man, that's a great story." And that's how that happened. So then the song I'd written, I did it as a duet with Ricky Van. And honey, let me tell you something. when you're singing this close, and here's a microphone between you and Ricky Van, and that voice is coming straight at you like from this far away, that was one of the most humbling experiences. Even though he was my friend and everything, when he's singing this far from your face, you feel like you've just died and gone to heaven, and there's an angel singing in front of you. And it was singing my song that I'd written with Alan Shamblin.
Right.
Alan Shamblin, who wrote "I Can't Make You Love Me."
Right.
So here I am. It's like, what? How did this happen? I don't even know how this happened, but I believe it happened because I helped Betty for no reason other than just to help Betty. And then something really wonderful came out of it for me.
Right.
And which of course you can't plan something like that.
No, heavens no.
So I mean, I feel
Give it forward.
Part of the journey for me is when I'm generous, when I'm with my time and my love. And I think love is really what it's about. When I'm generous with my time and my love and my energy and my gifts, whatever those are.
And the greatest of them is love.
That's right. That it came back.
Yeah.
Came back to me, and I could never have planned that.
Yeah. So from there, we're forward a couple of weeks from today,
Yes.
And this like most things on video and YouTube and everything will live forever. But a couple of weeks from today, there's a play of yours being put on in Murfreesboro.
Right.
So we've gone, like you say, full circle.
Right.
To New York.
Right.
To California.
Right.
Back to New York.
Well, New Jersey.
Yeah.
South Jersey to California to Nashville to
Back
New York and then back to
to
Nashville.
California.
No, not back to California.
Well,
just back
no,
to,
but you were out there.
Well, that's
you
what-
were out there with your mother, weren't you,
Yes,
for a while?
well, I go there all the time. Yeah, to take care of my mom. Yeah.
So you were at least you were there for a period of time, and then back to Tennessee,
Right.
and on stage. And do you ever look? I guess my question that I want to ask right now: do you ever want to be as a lead or a strong part in a play that you write?
Yes and no. I really like watching other people. It's like writing a song and have other people play the melody and add to it. That's what happens with a play. When you write a play, you have actors that bring something more that I would look at and think, that's so good. I'm going to keep that in my play.
Yeah.
That was good. I'm going to write that direction in there, you know?
Because they
So
are actors.
They're actors and they're
Professional
creative.
actors,
They're
yeah.
creative artists, and they bring their everything they have. Like a great player, great
Right.
guitar player brings more to your song.
Right.
So yes, there are a few things I'd like to play that I've written, but mostly I appreciate other people bringing what they have
Right.
to the table. Yeah. So and plus I don't like memorizing and having to memorize the words anymore and putting makeup on every night. All that. So like a lot of work
and
these
the thing
days.
about it is, I think as a creator, it's nice to look beyond yourself and see something being done that's better than you.
Better than me. Now I do like to direct.
Well, of course.
I do like to direct because as an actor, as a trained actor, as somebody who knows choreography, I have a sense of movement on the stage, and I like my plays to be very active. So I do like to direct, but I haven't done that on a large scale yet. I mean, maybe someday. You know. But this play
Yeah.
that will be in Murfreesboro at the Walnut House on the square on the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th of January 2020. That play I wrote for my final thesis, and my thesis for when I was at Lesley University, and I've tweaked it since then, but it's had a few productions. It had its world premiere in Greenville, South Carolina, and then when it was produced there, it was just so good. I loved it. But it was based on the stories that I'd learned about women from the Tennessee prison for women. I volunteered there for 7 years. And I loved it. I love the women. So this is a story about because it's called The Volunteer. So it's a story about the volunteer who learns and how she changes by meeting all these different women. But I put all their stories into one inmate. So there's an inmate, there's the volunteer, and then there's the guard. But the person who changes, the protagonist, changes because of her experiences with these two other people in the prison system. But basically what I did was, when I was volunteering, I remember sitting in a room thinking, what if the lights went out? What if there was a break right now? What if like the guard just went like, you know? And you sort of think that when you're in a room with, and yet you overcome it, and it ends up being this amazing experience. But I tried to take all of those thoughts and put them into one night in a play, because that's a play. You got to you got to have the reason that you're bringing people into the seats.
And you look at a song and you're thinking, okay, I've got to get this across in less than 3 minutes.
Right, exactly. It's very simple.
Because if it goes further than that, unless it is outstanding, it's never going to be heard for 4 minutes.
Right. No.
But then you take that and you put that in a play.
Right.
And
you have to have the same urgency.
You've got to have that same urgency. You've got to, which words do you cut out?
Right.
You know, I'm wordy in my writing, and I'll go back and I'll go, okay, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that.
Yeah.
I cannot say that and have somebody have a breath.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so that's the people who can do that. And not saying that because I can do it doesn't mean I can do it well.
No.
The people who do that and can do it well are the people who find success
Right.
in that industry.
Yeah, if it's that day, if it's that moment, if it's that person. Sometimes really great writers. I've met some really great writers, songwriters who never really got published, never really had big hits, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's some of
I
it's
know one.
I know one, John. And but it's true because what happened, it just, all those things just have to line up.
Yeah.
You know.
So they've lined up for you.
Sometimes, and sometimes they're just, a meteor just comes, explodes, and they're all spread out. I have no idea what I'm doing.
But isn't the chaos by definition of itself beautiful in a way?
For me, yes.
Yeah.
For me, I really didn't start this journey to be rich or famous, or I really started this journey because I felt like it was a spiritual journey, a creative and spiritual journey to become a person that I wanted to be, and a person who was, I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to learn and grow and offer myself and whatever gifts I have so that it would bless, entertain, help, support, whatever, others. And that's really what it was about. It's really not about, for me, I mean, I'd be lying if I told you I would not want Dolly Parton's paycheck. I think that would be amazing. And I got to work with Dolly. She sang on my record. I sang on one of hers. She sang on a song called Corner of the World. So cool.
She's got to be as cool as she comes across.
She's
more.
She's pretty cool.
Yeah,
she's pretty cool. I mean, she's. I've gotten to be in some of her homes in Cal. She has so many homes. I don't know how she keeps track.
She doesn't have to keep track.
That's
Somebody
true.
else keeps track.
That's true.
Somebody else even takes care of the chaos that surrounds her.
That's true.
All she has to do is look at it and say, "Oh, isn't that pretty? I want that gone."
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much. And she's been to my home.
Yeah.
And she sang on my record, and
that's
just
great.
for proof, I brought a picture over here of that, which you can
it's down on the floor down there. Philip will hit that camera.
This is when I was in the studio working on my album called, it's on Star Song Records, which is now owned by EMI. And it was a project that I did called Stranger. Stranger in a Strange Land was the title cut of it.
I remember that.
You do? Yeah. That was, thanks. And this, so I got to be in the studio with Dolly, and that's me acting like a nincompoop down here, like somewhere over here. I'm just acting like, it was just beyond, you know. What happened is I was in the studio with her, and I was just listening to her cut a song, and she said, "When are you gonna ask me to sing on your record?" And I turned around and I was like looking, I'm not even joking, I looked behind me and I said, "Are you talking to me?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "Well, you're gonna let me sing on your record?" I said, "Well, yes." And so the next thing I know, a few weeks later, there she is singing with me on a song called Corner of the World. And she does some background vocals and some lead parts, and it was one of the thrills of my life.
It was a big corner of your world at that
big corner of
point,
my
wasn't
world.
it?
Yes, very big corner of my world. And that Ricky Skaggs also is on this album, and Twyla Paris, Fairfield 4, Phillips, Craig and Dean, the Sweethearts of the Rodeo. It was sort of a who's who, and I could never get over myself. And I used to say, when I die, they're going to have like, on my tombstone, it would say Dolly Parton and Twyla Paris sang on her CD, and it killed her. That's what I was going to have. But a few years have gone by, so I don't have to think that anymore. Over here on this one called Voices for Victims, I worked with Vince Gill and Patricia Berg and Patty Loveless, and this was quite a night of talent. And there I am with these singers, songwriters, I'm like right underneath Vince Gill on this poster because I sang at the same concert. We were doing a fundraiser and an awareness for victims, and it was about victims' rights that we did with the mayor's wife, Andrea Conte, back in the day.
Yes.
And so we did that it was a big concert, and it was just an amazing event that I got to be a part of and sing a couple songs that I had written, which are also on that same CD.
Very good.
Yeah, so I was kind of look how old it is. Oh my gosh, that's like, what does it say, 1999?
Yes.
I was probably 12 at the time.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure I was 12.
11, I would say.
Now, I was pretty young, but I was a grown-up, but still, holy smokes, that's 20 years ago, right?
So,
oh, good Lord, I'm old. Oh my gosh.
So
I feel very
from
old.
all of that to movies.
All right, hang on.
Yeah.
Let me run back out there.
Okay.
And I've got a shot of this.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about.
Do you want to talk about that, or do you want
Yes, I will like to talk about that. I talked about that earlier, but I would.
Okay, sure. Go ahead and touch it.
Okay.
He's laying there too.
Oh yeah. Maybe I should show the CD that all this stuff is on, but. This, I don't need to point to it, right? I wrote a play, I think I told you about that a little bit earlier. I wrote a play called 8888 with my friend, Frank Harmon.
Right.
And I think I told you about how Ross Perot presented me with this medal. And I've had that framed. And that gentleman in the wheelchair is actually Frank Harmon. And that is really him. And he died from ALS in 2009 on the 4th of July, which happened to be his very favorite holiday. And that's me dancing over him. And we performed that little play and won first place, which was such an honor. But even more of an honor was just working with him and giving him a voice, giving him the opportunity to be seen and heard, because he was hidden away in this VA, in this Veterans Association hospital in Prescott, Arizona, and was, except by his family, he was kind of disappeared into the hospital, the annals of the hospital and the hallways, and there he is on stage, and what an amazing thing that I had that opportunity to do that for him. So this CD called Stranger is the one that has the songs for victims.
Right.
And the song for healing. It's about healing and overcoming things. I wrote a song with Dwight Lyles called In Your Hands, how when something happens to you, it's in your hands that you can make something good of it. You can give it to God, you can give it away, or you can turn it on yourself, and you really have a lot of power. We really, as human beings, I think, have a lot of power to choose who we become.
Yes.
And I know you know that. I know you do. And so anyway, it's just...
You want to see a miracle, be the miracle.
Amen. That's the truth. Preaching it now, baby. Wait, go ahead. Okay. So I now am focusing on primarily theater, because I get to incorporate music, and I get to incorporate whatever I want. And I was for 3 years the representative for the state of Tennessee for the Dramatists Guild, which represents playwrights from all over the world. And I was chosen to be the very first representative for the state of Tennessee by the New York office. So I just relinquished that title in February because I'd done my term, and I wanted to be able to focus a little more on my life with my husband, and we have a grass-fed finished beef that we run and produce. He does that, and I just like staying on the farm and writing. And so I wanted to not have to do so much traveling for other playwrights. Yeah. And I want to try to get back to writing music some, and just kind of feel like I'm a season in my life where I want to just sort of take it in. taken the life, you know, that I've.
Well, and you deserve to be able to live it as you choose.
Yeah.
You have given.
Yes.
You have been given to, and you have shared, and so that leaves an opening for you to be able to adventure for yourself.
Yeah.
And find joy in that.
Yeah.
And I think you deserve that. And I think
so.
you'll do it very, very well.
I'm trying. I have found that it is hard for me, and I think it's true for women more than men perhaps, but it is hard. I almost don't know what to do with myself when I'm not working on projects for other people and like serving people. So now, oh, by the way, I'm actually on a committee with the Rutherford County Arts Committee. Yes, we're doing, for the 100-year celebration of women's rights to vote, women's suffrage movement.
Right.
We're doing a big project about women in history from Rutherford County. So that's going to be this coming August. We're having 10-minute plays and a full-length play, and they'll have a lot of events around that. And then I guess my husband and I want to get in a motorhome and travel around, get on the road and have adventure again.
Good for you.
Yeah. So we have a few months, and then.
You know, you have no idea how fulfilling this is for me to sit here in this chair and listen to someone like you share your life story, your successes, your frustrations. And to be able to look and see your bright eyes and your smiling face and realize that it's all okay, folks. You know, when you get to the end when you get toward the end of that journey, it's all okay. And it will continue to be. Andy Landis, my dear, thank you very much for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
I hope I can be part of the rest of your journey, and I hope we can do some things together.
That'd be fun.
It will be fun. We'll make sure of that.
I love having fun.
There you go. There you go. Folks, that's this episode of Melodies Wrapped Around Life with my newfound friend, Andy Landis, and we hope you enjoy this. Tell your friends about what we do, and we'll see you next time.
For information regarding It's a Matter of Music's catalog and songs written by John Gray, contact John at 931-581-5238 or John Gray at pheadtv.com.